ready? We rolling? We already started our meeting, so. Okay, we can do that. I don't. Okay. All right, we all ready to start? All right, let's get going because it is a little past 6 o'clock. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Regan. I'm a member of the Advisory Committee, and welcome to the fiscal year 27 budget presentation. Thank you all for coming. If it's not a record crowd, it's pretty close. All right, Jeff assures me that it's a record crowd. So what we're going to do is I'm going to present at a generally high level, and then towards the end, if people are interested, we can drill down into certain sections. Unfortunately, the printer was too slow to print out copies of the budget for everyone here. I needed to get that off to Karen earlier, and I didn't realize that. So that's on me, so we don't have it. Anyway, so let's get started. For those of you who are not steeped in town finances like I am, I'm going to risk being a little too basic. But fundamentally, when we do the budget at the annual town meeting, there are I think of it as two sides. There's the operating budget, and that operating budget is time limited. It starts on July 1st, which is the start of the fiscal year, and it runs until June 30th or thereabouts. That's when it officially closes, but it usually takes the finance team a couple weeks to make sure fiscal year the prior fiscal year bills come in and they get paid against the proper fiscal year. Because if you order something in June, it's like it should be paid for that fiscal year, but the bill may not show up until July. And so they have ways of handling that. But fundamentally, fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. And that's the operating budget, which has the select board, debt and assessments, water department, fire, police, all that. The other side to the budget are the warrant articles. And those are typically, let me go back. The operating budget is typically financed through the property taxes and a couple other things that I'll get into. The warrant articles are generally financed through transfers. And so what we spend the money on warrant articles does not increase the tax rate that fiscal year. Some warrant articles are funded through revenue accounts. Like the ambulance service we have in town, that's entirely self-funding at the moment. Money comes in for the ambulance services they provide, and we use that to then pay for the operation of the ambulance service every year with the expenses they incur and the wages that they have to give out. The cable commission, we get money from Charter in town for an account, and so when we do the cable committee and all those expenses, those are paid out of the money that come from Charter as part of their franchise agreement in town, is how I believe it works. Other articles are funded through free cash. Free cash is what happens when we manage our money well every year. So at the end of the fiscal year, when the accountant closes the books, they look at sometimes revenue comes in higher than expected, and sometimes we are prudent and we're able to underexpend our expense accounts. Both of those generate free cash at the end of the year. And free cash is generally a good thing because it allows, you can think of it as kind of saving up for larger capital projects. We can use the free cash to fund things. And if free cash is a light one year, sometimes we can take a holiday. And I personally think that free cash is good because it encourages it. Without free cash, all our departments would say, well, if I don't spend my money, I'm going to lose it. And then you get people doing things that are of marginal value simply because they want to maintain their budget. And so instead, the town benefits from having the accounts underexpended if available. And then we can use that for things like buying police cruisers or putting money into the road reconstruction and repair account or into repairing a building. Or sometimes that money goes into stabilization funds, which we can then take out at other times, like this year. So those are the two things. And so I'm going to talk to both of those, but it kind of splits down. Each is in a slightly different or in a fairly different context than the other. So for the operating budget, this is a diagram of how the money comes in and goes out. So for the operating budget, we have three main sources of income. We have local receipts, things like water department revenue, motor vehicle taxes, permits and fees. Investment income, the money that's at the bank that generates some interest, and that counts as local receipt. So that's the first number, the 1 million and change. The second leg of that stool, state aid. You'll also hear it called cherry sheets because I suspect because they were cherry-colored paper when they were printed, when things were printed on paper. And so people still call them cherry sheets. So if you hear cherry, the third and biggest leg of this stool is the tax levy. And I've given a handout here, and that will be in the online stuff also, to give kind of an overview of that. I'm happy to take some feedback on that. Like I said, I am kind of steeped in this, having spent years on this committee. So everything I'm talking about is stuff that I've dealt with before, but if you feel that it's not clear, that there's something that could be done to make it easier for someone else starting up to understand, please let me know. So fundamentally, the levy limit is controlled by Proposition 2.5, and the number I'm showing here is the maximum. Not saying we're raising this much. I'm saying this is the most we could raise. And then you go over to the expense, and then after that we start having expenses. And I believe, let's see. And so we've got, so we've got the levy limit. Oh, I'm sorry, debt exclusion. That is something the town has that allows us to raise a little more than our levy limit because we've decided that we have some debt that is excluded. And I'll talk to that later. Anyway, the expenditure, we have abatements and exemptions. That's not on the budget, but that is something that the town accounts for. And I was hoping someone says, Beth, you there? Beth Coughlin is dialed in, but she must be going through a dead spot. Anyway, it's $30,000 and it counts against us. And then the rest of that is the operating budget, which is at its current form. It's probably the number at town meeting is going to be a little bit different because it always jiggles a little bit as we come in. And okay, good. Beth, I was just going to ask if you remembered what on the tax recap, what the abatements and/or exemptions line was for.
It's to allow for, if the assessors make the determination to do abatements or rebates, that they have some room to do that.
Okay, and
so
that's
generally estimated because there are certain eligibilities like veterans and disabilities, that sort of thing.
Okay, so it allows us to account for the fact that we may elect to receive a little less of our tax revenue because of someone's status, disability, veteran status, or something like that. Okay. Yes. Hold on. There's a microphone coming your way so that for posterity.
Thank you. The number that is under operating budget, is that 11 million? It's just not clear.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
It's white on orange, which is not. Excel doesn't always make wise color choices. The number is $11,451,288.11. And of course the printout makes that even harder to read. Okay, I apologize for that. Those are hot off the press. All right, and then that final number is the levy headroom. We're not spending that money, but that's what I needed to get everything down to zero. That reflects how much more money we could spend while remaining on the we don't need one side of an override. And just so everyone knows, at the moment, we are not anticipating needing an override. We're not like some of our neighboring towns. Everything's fine. And if someone wants to ask me about that, I'm happy to talk about it. But we don't need to talk about it in the context of fiscal year 27. Not expecting it. And that's all I'm going to say about an override unless someone really corners me. All right. Are there any questions for the operating budget on the income and expense side? Because I think it's important when we talk about the budget that we understand the constraints of the budget. My first few years on the advisory committee, I only focused on the expense side. And fundamentally, if you don't track the local receipts and the state aid, it's like you don't understand how much the operating budget is going to affect your levy. Because the levy is what drives your property tax bill. every dollar the levy goes up is a dollar that has to be sent in across the town. Now, obviously, a dollar that's going to get spread pretty thin. But when you've got $7 million that need to be raised across the town, it's like adding another couple $100,000 is going to make that check you write every quarter go up some. How much? I don't remember. I know I looked at it a couple months ago. But anyway. All right, so I'm going to move on. And so now we're going to do a little, we're going to go do a little history. We're going to set the Wayback Machine to fiscal year 25. And what I want to do is I want to show here, this is what the budget looked like in 25, 26, and 27. And we have divided the budget into, into a term I call, groups. And so those are the major, if you're familiar with the town budget, those are the major organizational groups. So the first group is always general government. And then public safety, which is police, fire, inspections, animal control, a couple other things. And you work your way down until, until near the end, you second to last is debt and assessments, and the last one is the water department, because that's the way we've always structured it. And if we move that around, people are going to be kind of looking at us funny. So this is just to give you an idea of the height of each stacked bar is the total amount. And then each color represents a major category. And one thing you'll notice is that the biggest chunk of our budget by far is the school system. Now, of course, one of the reasons why I think Brookfield's a wonderful town and why I have all my kids here and helps our property values is we have a wonderful school system. And so that's something that we need to keep in mind. And that school includes both all our school expenses, the elementary school that we're in here, the regional school system, Tantascwa, junior high and high school, and all of the transportation and the busing. Those are the three main drivers of that. And I think the elementary school budget is $3 million. And Jeff, do you remember what the regional is? And I think transportation's around 50. What's that? Oh, $4 million for the elementary school. I think you're right. I think you're right about that because. Yeah. Okay. And so this is the same data shown a little differently. This is a focus on how much each group has gone up over the years. And so it's just another way. I like to look at the data a couple different ways because it can surface different insights. Yes.
Depending on what the town meeting.
Okay. Yes,
right?
to answer the question, the fiscal year 27 numbers are projected. That's based on what I'm using here is what we are recommending to the annual town meeting, and then the annual town meeting will approve those. So it's like or not. It can be fun on the floor. It's like I'm disappointed the music department at the high school is having its banquet on the night of our town meeting, and my daughter is a senior this year, and it's like that's always a fun time. So we're gonna try and move things along. All right. So and then this one I'm showing how much each group has gone up. The orange is fiscal year 26 increase, and the blue is fiscal year 27 projected increase. And so we've got some big ones. School is higher this year, but it's around 4%, which is a little on the higher side, but not completely out of line with past. Debt and assessments going up significantly. Worcester County retirement and health insurance are the main drivers there. General government, I think the big driver there is the technology budget. Technology was under budgeted in fiscal year 26. We have a shortfall in that account, and so we are upping it to an amount to fully fund the contract that we have with the support vendor. was the main driver there. Let's see. And then water, I would say, is the other big one. The water department is we're projecting an increase in the expenditure because there's a new water superintendent. And Jeff, do you remember what they have going on in the water department? I mean, they've got new software.
Well, again,
It's-
Don, you're gonna be hiring another operator too, is that it, or?
Yeah, he's right there.
The big number was we have allocated a lot more money for a secondary operator.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me.
The reason for that is in the past, our primary operator did much of the work, covering everything. We have a new operator, and we really should have a part-time secondary operator. How we operate now is with a on-call operator who comes in and covers weekends and when the primary is not available.
Okay. And thank you. And one thing I want to point out is the water department increase, it's a large percentage increase, but if you look here, the water is our smallest group. I would say the water department in total is around $200,000 in a projected budget. So from a total dollar standpoint, I would rather it not go up, but if a group is going to go up 15% or whatever water's going up, it's like water department's the one to do it. We don't want school going up 15 or 20%.
Tom,
Rudy, yes.
you said that the first item, schools, was going up 4%. Can you give us percentages for the other groups?
I can. There, it's on the screen. Yes. I wasn't going to talk to this, but the only way for me to get this into the presentation, I couldn't put it in the notes because the formatting didn't take, is I had to put it on a slide. So, all right. So it should be in the copy of the presentation that you got. You just need to go one page ahead. All right. So if there are any questions on this, I'm happy to answer them, but I am not a fan of trying to talk to numbers on the board or trying to just read what's on there. So I'm going to move on. And here we have my favorite chart. It's called a sunburst. So the inner ring is broken out by budget groups, and then the outer ring is the departments within those groups. So, and if you have trouble reading it, I can help out, or it'll also be in the online copy. But you can see on the right-hand side, big chunks taken up by the school, and then the next one is debt and assessments. So we're really not even, other than the school, we're not providing much services to the town. And we've already gone through a good chunk of the budget. And then after that is, general government, then public safety, public works. And then it goes down from there in terms of a percentage of the budget. So what I would point out is that arguing over a $1,000 difference, or whether we're going to add or remove $1,000 in the in a budget under culture and recreation, that's only $1,000. It's like, if we're looking to save money, we should be looking to the bigger pieces of this pie. And I'm not sure how much we can. It's like, but the question is, and we can always save money if we're willing to have less services from the government. It's like, is there room for efficiency? I expect there is. I'm not involved in the administration of the town. It's like, so, but go ahead, Rudy.
But there's nothing we can do about debt and assessments, for example. We can't we can't reduce that amount.
It's called the assessment section, but things like our liability insurance and the health insurance for our employees is. So we could, So I won't hide it. We could say no one's getting health insurance. Now, and the machine's not happy with that. It's buzzing at me. And I'm saying, and I put it out there almost as an ad absurdum, or whatever the right term is, argument. Because if we did that, all of the employees would leave and we would be rehiring them with people who are willing to accept less because they are worth not as much. And so it's hold on, Marty. And so, but that's always something you have to understand. It's like, I mean, if we needed to save money, it's like we could do something like we could reduce police coverage. Because right now we have, I think Chief Blanchard aims to have 24-hour coverage. And when he didn't have enough staff, he backed off that. But now that he's hiring staff on, he's going to bring that back in. But if we wanted to reduce, say, the police budget, we could do that. We could reduce the fire budget by reducing the amount of training they do. But I don't think that's a great idea either. So we need to understand that if we do talk about reducing a line in the budget, we have to think about what is the impact on the people of the town. Marty.
Hold example of saving money.
Hold on. For the people at home.
Just a recent example of saving money was Lori changing the insurance carrier, which saved the town a significant amount of money.
Until the middle of the year, yes. So I'm sorry. Since I'm not sure the microphone picked up Marty's question. In fiscal year 26, the town moved to a new health insurance carrier, and one of the things that happened is that in the middle of the year, our rates went up, and that is putting some pressure on the fiscal year 26 budget, and you will see some of the result of some of that pressure when we talk about the warrant articles. But it is they are staying with that carrier. The expectation is that was a one-off, but they are looking for savings. And I know that for Worcester County Retirement, the bill is due on July 1st, and if you pay it by, I think, July 10th, you get a significant discount. I don't know how much it is, but it's enough that everyone pays early, or pays within that early discount window, so that you get it. And I know that one year we didn't, and it caused us problems because we budgeted the discounted amount and we missed getting it in. And that's one of the problems you have when you don't have a properly staffed treasurer's office, or because we did not have a properly staffed treasurer's office at that time, we missed paying that in the early window, and we wound up having to pay more because we had the cash. It wasn't a cash flow problem. It was someone getting around and writing the check and bringing it into Worcester and saying, here you go. And that's, again, why we want to have reasonably good people working for us and not bottom of the barrel, for want of a better term. Jeff, what? Step on camera. Step on camera. Ladies and gentlemen, a face made for radio.
My son used to hit that in basketball.
Jeff, like a lollipop, not an ice cream cone. Point it right at your mouth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, just to get back to Rudy's original
Closer.
question.
Yes.
How's that? Better? Obviously, you can see from the main drivers that there's not a lot that the town has control of as far as expenses, because a big part of that is personnel. And so what the advisory committee and I believe the select board over time has been looking at is possible regionalization of certain services, and that seems to be what's going a lot of the smaller towns banding together. So look for that in the future. We had attempted a couple of ideas as far as maybe, ambulance, possibly fire, or the dispatch things like that, to try to, get a better coverage for a lower number of people covering and all that. So again, this is where the future is going. It's unfortunate, state aid is probably going to be diminishing also. So it's a reality. But right now, I think we're doing the best we can. As Tom has mentioned, as we see it every year when we review the budget, the people who are looking at insurance, and I know Ron, when he was here, the former town administrator, he used his contacts with this different insurance carrier to hook on to that. And it was a good idea at the time, and then again, they decided to raise their rates halfway through the cycle. So, you know, it happens, but again, we're making every effort. The town is making every effort to keep the costs as low as possible.
All right, and then what I did was I took the same graph, but I took the school and debt and assessments out in order to give a more detailed view of the other parts of the budget. And so that's in your presentations. It says no schools, but I think it's no schools and no assessments. Nope, I left assessments in, my bad. But it still gives a pretty good idea of what's in there. Like you can see on debt and assessments, it's debt and assessments. We really don't have much debt in this town. I mean, I think the police station and the fire truck are the main, and then the sawmill dam, which is a small payment, as I recall. And so it's not loading the budget. And I'll say by funding things through debt, it allows us to buy things without having to save up the cash. And to a certain extent, I'm of the opinion that, like the police station, that is a benefit that people today, like we built that, 10, 12 years ago? It was sometime, let's say it was 10 years ago. It's like, we built that 10 years ago. And so the town has been benefiting from that from 2016 on, or whatever the year is. Don't crucify me for getting that date wrong. But my point is that we could have saved up money, and built that thing in 2020. But then what would have happened was the residents of the town up to 2020 would have paid for it, and everyone else later, and then from 2020 on, the residents of the town would have got that without paying for it. And so this aligns our expenditures to the benefit. And so, yes, there is interest cost, and yes, by not saving up and paying for it in a lump sum, we are now committed to that payment. So there is a balance there. But I think there is an argument to be made that the people who are benefiting from an asset should be the ones paying for it. Now, obviously, if we had gobs and gobs of money around, we could bequeath our future citizens with lots and lots of shiny toys with no debt. And if that happens, I'm going to pinch myself because then I'm going to wake up. All right. So are there any questions on the operating budget? I apologize. I did not have a chance to make printouts of the budget in its detailed glory. But I can put them up on the board, and we can go through them if that's what you guys want. And
Tom, so where's the ambulance fund on this chart?
okay, the ambulance is not on this chart because the ambulance is funded through a warrant article and not through the operating budget.
Okay.
So because the ambulance has its own revenue and is not funded from state aid, local receipts, or the tax levy, we don't put it on the operating budget. Instead, there is a warrant article account. There are actually, I think there's at least two, and I think there's a third. There is ambulance wages, ambulance expenses, and I think there's a third one for the ambulance chief's salary, just to bring it in alignment with how we do the worker wages versus the chief wages for police and fire. And those warrant articles are voted on by the town meeting for fiscal year 26. We approved all three, or with a certain level of funding, and those they are warrant article accounts to fund those purposes concurrent with fiscal year 26. When they are done, when fiscal year 26 ends and all the bills that those accounts are intended to pay are done, the money, any excess money in those accounts will flow back into the ambulance reserve receipt account, which is where funding for fiscal year 20 for those three accounts for fiscal year 27 will come from. Did that answer your question, Don?
It does.
Okay.
Except
All right, I was going to say, because you had the look of I didn't quite nail it, so let's go.
So that is very similar to the water department. So the water department funds get paid back to the town, but it's not a warrant. It's in the budget.
Yes. Were the accountant here, they could give you the proper, technically correct answer. I've had this discussion with her. My understanding is that the water department, there is not enough revenue in the water department to reliably fund it on a year-over-year basis, and so therefore it is put on it shows up on the town books, but the structure of the water department is very similar to that in that, but because the income and expenses are a little too finely balanced, is that it goes on the operating budget, and then at the end of the year, the accountant looks at how much revenue was brought in, what the expenses were, and sorry, I get this thing yapping at me. Let's just saying connected, disconnected. Connected, disconnected, and that's our tech expert, people. he does a great job, but the equipment's not backing him up. Sorry, going back to your question, Don. The water department is intended to operate in a similar way, but with a different structure in that, let's say the water department takes in $250,000 in a year and its expenses are $200,000, then at some point in the future, in the next fiscal year at the next town meeting, we'll have a warrant article to transfer $50,000 to the water surplus account. Is the intent. But for that to work, the water department has to generate enough extra cash. And that's, from what I understand, that's one of the challenges. Because you guys have a lot of expense pressure. Not because you're not managing things well. You have state mandates and people need to be paid market rates.
Right. But we always do transfer the excess. Mm-hmm. There always is.
Yes.
Yeah.
My understanding is there is an article in there for that transfer this year.
I believe it's 40 grand. I believe it's 40 grand.
I believe the request was for 40 grand. So. I'm surprised, but we don't have one of our usual attendees who's very eager to get into the weeds on the account numbers. So we'll hear from them at town meeting, I guess. Go ahead. When will the town warrant be ready for review? I don't know. I'll be honest. I'm not the one printing it, so I can't tell you. I know that when someone from the select board shows up, we can ask them because Jeff. Well.
You cranked it up? All right, is this better?
Yes.
All right. So the advisory committee and the select board, we always have this discussion because we always have the best of intentions, and then by law, the warrant book, not the actual budget, but the warrant has to be published. I think it's either 7 or 10 business days before the town meeting, and normally we mail it out. So I know that it has to go to the publisher on Tuesday, which is why we're running around crazy this week. And then it should come out whatever 10 days prior to the 4th is. And that's when you get it. And let me, because there was a lot of kerfuffle last year, and I got phone calls over the weekend last year because what was in the warrant book is not the total that goes in front of the town meeting. But by law, there's certain warrant articles have to be in, but the budget, I think, still has some time. So it's like a two-edged thing. There's more detail in what you see at the town meeting than what actually comes out 10 days before, but it's enough to give you an idea. And so that's just the way it works. There's no ulterior motives or, it's all very transparent.
Yes.
And
I know that
I tried to explain that to people last year, but
Yeah, I know the select board was busily motioning and approving things last night at their meeting. I wasn't able to be there, but yeah, yeah, and then my understanding of law is that the contents of the warrant have to be posted. If the book isn't printed, as long as what's going into the book is printed or is made available publicly at town hall and at the the post office.
Can I take that one?
Go ahead, Beth, please. We have
Yeah.
an expert.
So the deal is that the actual warrant articles, right, have to be firm fixed 7 days prior and posted publicly. However, the budget itself is considered the motion. And the motion has the opportunity to change right up until the moment that that motion is made. And given that there's oftentimes philosophical differences on what needs to be the final content on that motion, you will sometimes see movement between what was printed in the town meeting book and what gets presented or motioned on the floor. But there's nothing like illegal, immoral, or fattening about that. It is just a case of if there's still some discussion over specific line items, sometimes more information is brought forward after the printing of the book. That's where you will see some differences, and we can address those and explain them on the town hall meeting floor or on the annual town meeting floor. So, but that's what's going on when you see that, is that the budget itself is the motion. Typically, I think it's Article 2, which is where we authorize the town to raise and appropriate what's needed in order to run the town.
And then if you're like me and you're always thinking, well, how can someone do something sneaky with this? Is that the changes between what's printed and what can be made, as I understand it, is the change has to be consistent with the intent of the original. You can't put a straw man article in there and then completely do something completely different with it. You can modify the amount, you can make some minor changes, and that is one of the purposes of the moderator, is to determine whether that difference is permissible or not. And that's why we have an elected moderator. I didn't get that too bad, Beth, did I? All right. But it's like, I know, because I know when you said it could be changed, my first thought was, well, how big a change could I get through that? How big a loophole is that? And I wanted to, it's like, and maybe not everyone's as looking as to how to work a system like I do, but I did want to help people understand. I'm killing Jeff over here. That's what I do.
So and really at the end of the day, what we can't have is Article 2 like not be the complete budget, right? That would be wildly inappropriate and would be out of, the moderator would not allow. We can't have an article on there saying, hey, we want to do the school roof and have somebody on the floor change the school roof to, I want to do all the roofs on all the town buildings within the town of Brookfield, right? Stuff like that would be considered out of scope. The moderator would tend to rule against it, right? But say we say, hey, I want to, I'm trying to think of a good example.
Just change the amount on a motion.
Yeah, like
on an
hey,
article.
we want to spend $25,000 for safety equipment for the fire folks, and then a quote comes back, and all three of them are 10% higher than that $25,000 in between the time that they put the warrant article in and the time we're meeting on the town hall meeting floor. Totally appropriate for that motion to get changed from what's printed in the town meeting book. Now, totally appropriate for people to question that from the floor, right? If there's something that doesn't match, if there's something that you don't approve of, if there's something that, you see a line at 0 and you want to know why it's 0 and last year it was $2,000, then it's totally, that is the forum for us to have that discussion, right? So,
No, that's what this meeting's for.
well, for those that attend, right?
Yeah, I know.
But this is being a record-breaking crowd, and we have to have 35 people in order to hold a town meeting. So not everybody who's at that town meeting was either here or got to watch the video. So.
Testing.
All right. So this is one more plug, again, totally extemporaneous, but for volunteers in the community and for people to take, take some time and look at the stuff that we present, because the advisory committee puts a lot of time into this every year. We know the budget cycle fairly intimately. Most of us have been on the committee for years. And what I always have trouble with when I stand up here at the town meeting is that there are so many, again, as Tom alluded to, preconceived notions of what's happening or what's going to happen or whatever. And you have to trust us on the advisory committee that we do our best to level the playing field and make sure that the numbers are accurate and that they represent what the needs of the community are. And I keep saying that every year, and every year something goes wrong, and we take the hit for it because, again, errors happen. But I think if people would just adjust their mindset a little bit when they go into town meeting, and give the people a chance to talk, present, and keep it very as low key as possible. And reasoned arguments are great. The reason why, I don't know if you know my neighbor Tim Rowan, but I didn't know who he was, even though he lived across the street from me. He stood up in town meeting, and everyone else was yelling, screaming about something. He stood up, gave a very reasoned argument, point by point, and I said, damn, that's someone I want on my committee. And I got him, after a year of trying, got him on. But those are the type of people that we have that try to evaluate stuff and present it. And again, it is what it is, but I think if people would go in with the mindset, listen, try to understand it, and that's the best we can do.
All right. Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions on the operating budget? Yes, ma'am.
This is more a point of interest, having gone to so many annual town meetings, I can't count them, but on occasion, there are articles that the advisory board recommends, but the select board does not agree with. So in that case, it's up to each individual person to make a decision. And Jeff, I guess, can you explain what's behind that difference of opinion between the advisory board and the select board?
Well,
Is it always
do you
a
have
monetary difference?
do you have a particular article in mind that you're asking that question about? Because otherwise I'd say that's more of a hypothetical, and that would effectively depend on what we saw, what advisory saw in the context of that article versus what the select board saw. Because it would depend. I mean, because it could be. It could be any number of things. The disagreement could be based on the amount. It could be based on just we don't think this is a good use of funds. It's like
No, exactly. But again, it's our duty to recommend what we feel is appropriate based on our volunteer townsfolk, whatever opinions. But we're looking at the numbers. The select board might be looking at something else in addition to the numbers. I don't know. I can't think of anything specifically in the last 2 or 3 years that we have disagreed on, because normally we have several meetings, joint meetings, to sort of hash things out. I mean, you might have seen some on YouTube recently where we're going back and forth. We'll change numbers depending on the circumstances, and we always are getting new information. The only one, I don't know.
I can give an example that's going to be, I think, on this year's.
Oh, the chairlift?
Yeah, let's use the.
Well, right. Okay,
So, do you mind if I hit that one? I'll give you an example. Is that you're going to see in the book this year that the chairlift was supported by advisory. I'm sorry, I could have stepped to where he was to make your life easier. So,
we didn't support it. We didn't vote on it because we knew that there was no contract, so we did not want to.
right. Okay. So advisory didn't vote on it at all. The select board allowed it to stand on the town meeting warrant because historically speaking, the annual town meeting has supported it on 2 separate occasions, but we haven't managed to execute it. But the current majority on the select board does not support it. But I asked them to allow it to remain on the town meeting warrant because town meeting has spoken twice that yes, we want it. Now, if town meeting wants to come back this year and say we don't want it, then we have the legislature on the record saying we don't want it. But I didn't feel comfortable as part of the executive board to take that away from town meeting, where town meeting has twice made their intent very clear that that's something that they want for the community, right? So you'll see those differences, and some folks will look at it and say, you know, we haven't had it for the last 20 years, why would we do it now? And other people will say, we haven't had it for the last 20 years, it's time to get it done. It's kind of like when Barbara Clancy stood up at town meeting and said the bathroom's disgusting, let's get the daggone bathroom done, right? So it's that sort of thing. So the problem is, right, it's politics, it's compromise. There's times when there may not be alignment between advisory and between advisory committee and the Board of Selectmen. That's the executive and an extension of the executive branch, basically letting the legislature decide fundamentally. So.
Let me just give you one other example, not on the warrant articles, but on the budget. A lot of times you'll see that our recommendation for a line item in the budget is different. That has been the way in the past quite a bit. More recently, no, because we've had, as I said, more joint meetings to sort of hash things out before we get to the end. But normally, the one thing that I probably can speak to is on the cost of living increase each year. We have wildly fluctuated in the last several years as far as, the federal COLA one year was 8 something. And again, a town with a levy of 2.5 cannot afford that sort of increase. So there it's more a negotiation. All right, well, what's the right number? And given the composition of our advisory committee, we lean toward trying to be more fiscally conservative. So we're down in the 2.5, 3 range versus maybe a higher number for when the federal government says it's whatever because of inflation. That's the most significant thing that I can remember, because we always have those discussions and battles. And normally what happens is that, as you said, we recommend the number that's voted on at the town meeting is what the select board recommends. And we only recommend to them. So they're the ultimate, decision makers as far as what's presented.
Are there any more questions? No. Good. All right. So we can now go on to, talk about the warrant articles. So let me get that teed up, and you're going to get to see behind the curtain a little bit. Let's see. And there we go. Is that somewhat legible for you? Okay, good. And, all right. I can make it a little bigger, but we might just have to scroll back and forth. All right. Well, this is a summary. Yeah, my intention is. The question is, will the screen be available at town meeting? I would defer that to the select board, as that is part of the execution of the meeting. It would be helpful. The problem is if it would require a significant rejigging of how the front is done, because you would have to basically put a gap in there, and that would disrupt communication as people kind of chat and say as things come up. So my hope is that in either in the warrant book or maybe more likely as a handout, there would be a summary showing article number, quick description of the purpose, how much, funding source, and just kind of a little cheat sheet so that everyone can have one piece of paper and just go down and check off rather than having to go through the book. I mean, the book has the important detail and it is necessary, but it is not the most efficient to just understand. Like this list kind of gives you an idea, okay, what are we voting on? And then if you want to know more, the details are in the warrant book, because that's what we're expecting the motion to take the form of. And so does that answer your question? All right. So I mean, we've got a couple here. I'm just going to roll through them real quick. If you have any questions, just squawk, or sorry, not squawk. Let me know. But I mean, the first one is the typical. We have some unpaid bills from the previous year, and so we need to pay our vendors. And in order, because the fiscal year's closed, we have to have an explicit article to support that. And I believe this requires a 4/5. This type of motion article needs a 4/5 vote, but we got to do it. And then 4 and 5, it's like, who here was tired of shoveling snow this winter? Just me? All right. And I was going to say the highway department did a bang-up job keeping the roads clear, but it cost money, and we expended well beyond the budgeted amount for snow and ice, which is not unusual. The snow and ice removal accounts are, I guess I'll say, they're unusual in that by state law, expense accounts are not to be overspent. If it's a $10,000, it's like, and you have $10 left in it, you can't authorize $50 to be spent from an account that only has $10 in it. The wages account can be overspent. The one expense account that I know of that can be overspent is the snow and ice expenses. Because the idea is this town has to budget money, but if there's snow on the ground, you can't tell the plows, hey, everyone come back, we ran out of money. So the select when the amount of money in the account gets low, the select board authorizes the highway department to deficit spend is the right term, and the plows keep plowing, and then we find the money at the end of the year. Because of the way this year went, and with the health insurance hit halfway through, there's not enough extra money in the budget, as I understand it, to also cover snow and ice. So there's a warrant article here to use free cash to cover the overage on snow and ice accounts. And so that is the plan, and that's what we'll see on the floor of the town meeting. And then Article 6, there's concern that the operating budget itself may not have enough slack in it. And so this article is a placeholder. I'm sure next week Lori's going to be furiously going through the numbers and figuring out where we are landing here and whether we will need to act on this article or whether we'll just be able to pass it over because the budget we're going to be fine without it. And that's the accountant's job, and so we trust her to do that. And then after that, Dawn, Article 7, transfer to water surplus. All right. And then we have the ambulance 8, 9, and 10. Those, and I'm sorry, the green on the number just indicates that the advisory is recommending the town approve it. If there's no color, it means we have not decided. Like, for example, for snow and ice, we don't have a number, and our intention is we're not going to recommend something if we don't know how much it is. It's like my kids. My kids say, Dad, can I do something? It's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go tonight? Tell me that, and then I'll answer you. All right. So we've got 3 fiscal year 27 ambulance accounts. Those are all funded from the ambulance reserve revenue account, so they don't touch the tax rate. Let's see. And then for 11 and 12, there's a concern that the amount allocated in fiscal year 26 is not enough. And so we have placeholder accounts in case we determine those are needed. And if they're not needed, then the town meeting will simply pass them over, no action will be taken, and we move on with our day, and the meeting's a little slower. All right, and then, I would say most of the rest is fairly straightforward. One thing I'm going to take a step back because I'm looking at one of these articles. We like to, from a philosophy standpoint, one of our goals is to keep the tax burden fairly smooth. I'm not going to say flat because it's going to go up. But where we, in addition, part of that is bending the curve down so it doesn't go up too much. But the other thing is we don't want your tax bill jumping up and down year over year, where like one year it's $6,000, the next year it's $5,000, and the year after that it goes up to $8,000. It's not good for the people of the town to have their bills jumping all over the place. We'd rather have, like a smoother climb over those numbers, because those numbers did go up over time. So one of the ways we try and do that is here I'm looking at Article 14. It's only $10,000, but it's an occasional expense every maybe 3 or 5 years where the assessor's office needs to do a significant revaluation of the town. We could put that in the operating budget. It originally started in the operating budget, but then that would increase the levy by $10,000 this year, and we go back down $10,000, or then that would come out next year, because that doesn't have to happen every year. So philosophically, we say, well, why don't we pay for that as a warrant article with free cash, and that way these one-off expenses don't cause noise in the total tax levy. And so philosophically, that's what we try and do. That's one of the reasons some of these articles are here, is because they're one-offs, and it makes more sense to pay for them with a one-off revenue source rather than through the tax levy. And I know some people argue, well, free cash did come from the tax levy, and you're absolutely right. But that's money that was taxed, that's money that was raised in previous years. Like this year's free cash is a result of the fiscal year 25 budget. So spending it now is not going to change the fiscal year 27 tax bills. So that's why I say it doesn't affect the tax rate, because it doesn't affect the future tax rate. It already came in the checks from everyone that paid from the town. All right, so just quickly, 13 is for protective clothing for the fire department, assessor, and then highways. You guys can all read this. If you have any questions for up to, I will say 21, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to be reading it to you, and I don't want to do that. Rudy, do you have a question? Yeah.
Is that number for the chairlift? That's just a placeholder, right, Beth? Or do we have quotes or something?
So with regards to the chairlift, that number is actually based off of one quote that is the state contractor for that sort of work. However, given the dollar value, it would still have to go out to bid, and some of their terms and conditions are not something that we can actually approve as a municipality, which is weird coming from a state contract vendor. So, however, the primary purpose of having that back on the warrant is because we did return the money to the general fund a couple years back, we're going to be applying for an ADA enhancement grant. It typically serves you well on the grant applications if it's something that you're already have the funds set aside or some portion of the funds to set aside. That number has actually changed, and some of these numbers will have shifted from the working sheet that Tom is sharing tonight, but for the purposes of this conversation, the high level, what the articles are is good. We actually added a 20% contingency because of the fact that we don't have the quotes and it would have to go out, and even if it was just a case if we needed our own project manager, we'd want some form of contingency with that number so that what we're presenting to the town could be executed even if we didn't get the grant. But then if we do get the grant funding, obviously that would be money that would get returned to the town. So in a lot of instances, we will put stuff on the warrant presuming no alternate sources of funding while we're actively pursuing other forms of funding that will allow us to return those funds to the town coffers to recycle into the next project. So similar like with road reconstruction, we typically do $25,000 to $35,000, some years more, some years less. One of the reasons why we do that is because if you don't spend the money in the fiscal year with a warrant article, you can carry those funds over. And that allows you again, to have the funds available if you need, like matching funds for a big project. If something comes up that's unexpected, you have the option to spend it in that year or spend it in a follow-on year. So, stay up there, okay.
Is the chairlift intended to be a permanent structure? When we originally applied for it, it was approved for 5 years, pending installation of an elevator.
So, very good question. I thought it was 7, not 5. Was it 5? Okay. So I think the intent is, again, any of those solutions potentially have to be temporary versus permanent. But that would give us the opportunity to start using the second floor. And if we have enough traffic to justify the expense of the elevator, there's some people that say, well, then now you've got the sunk cost of the chairlift. Why don't you just go for an elevator? That's the road we went down before. We had gotten the money for the chairlift. That contractor went out of business during COVID. We weren't able to execute because we couldn't get the contractor that had originally given us the bid to show up because they didn't exist anymore. We got additional funding in order to do an elevator grant application, and then in the turnover of our town administrators, that project kind of got sidetracked, and we weren't able to follow up and execute on it. So we're just trying to hit the reset button and start the process over again. So it's kind of hard to show that we need the elevator unless we're using the space up there. This gives us an opportunity to do it incrementally.
All right, I think that gets us through Article 21. So Article 22, OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. And so that is something that we have actuaries at either the state or national level saying, you need to fund this. And Lori could talk to this more. She can guide us as to what it is. It's like, and Beth's getting that's going, he's not doing it well. I got to correct this.
No, it's okay.
Nah,
I'm if we can save, if with this crowd we can save it from the town meeting floor, then that's a societal good, right? So, other post-employment benefits. So, functionally speaking, we currently pay things like health care for our retirees out of our current operational budget. Back like a decade ago, we were given directive from the state that we had to fully fund what our total owed annuity is and have like a fully funded pension fund to cover those expenses. Okay, most small towns have not gotten close to what their actuaries are saying we would actually need to cover that amount. I will make sure that Lori brings the number of what we technically should have under the law in that. Okay. We're not close to it, but at least we've started to put money away for it, which there are a lot of small communities that have not even started. So it is something, I think it's like every 2 to 3 years we have to recalculate what our retiree obligation is, and we're supposed to be moving towards having enough that we could at some point in the future cease funding through our operational budget for those benefits and go ahead and fund it from functionally the trust fund that is the post-employment benefits. So that's one of those areas we've at least slowly started to fund when we've had fairly strong free cash. The three big, when you take a look at our free cash items, okay, it's barely half of our free cash that we're even proposing to allocate this year, okay? And there's really 3 large major considerations that we want to be considering as a community. One of them is OPEB. One of them that's on the table is to pay off our debt, even though it's this big a slice of the pie, okay? And the other one is to go ahead and up our stabilization, which is currently sitting about 5.5%. Typically, you want it between 7 and 10%, depending on who you ask from the state and according to our own fiscal policies, right? So having some sort of, I would say, balance between all of those is what we're going to wind up proposing on the town hall floor. Because if you watched the select board meeting last night, one of the members of the select board wants to just pay off all the debt and then not ignore the other two. I'm a big fan of actually upping our stabilization since we're taking so much out of the stabilization for the roof. It puts us in a position where we need to get a couple percent put back in there. And my personal philosophy, this is a personal philosophy, I am not speaking for the select board, is that it's good to try to keep a fairly consistent amount of debt in that debt and assessment so that when you need to make purchases, it doesn't like spike up the amount and start to gut the rest of your raise and appropriate budget, right? If you kind of keep that placeholder in there for things that legitimately the town has supported, it can be a benefit so that you're stabilizing that raise and appropriate line. But the flip side is that you can also pay off the debt and then, be looking the next year, to put the money in free cash all into stabilization. Like, so it's depends on whether you're addressing the needs of the town and making the right decisions from a capital needs perspective. So, I'm not sure if the highway equipment repair warrant article survived or not because we didn't have like the specific amounts and which equipment we were looking to repair. So I'd have to check and see if that one actually survived on the warrant or
Yeah,
not.
I think this is back from an older list that we got from Lori, and I suspect there's been some movement. And so my intention is that after this meeting, that I'm going to go through all of the information we've received from our accountant Lori and make sure that and scrub this and make sure that all the numbers are accurate. And that way, what we post for people to look at online will be as close as possible to what we're going to present on the floor, rather than presenting these numbers and that have had more time to drift from the floor action. Okay, and then we've got the Hampshire County Insurance Trust. Beth, that's health insurance, right? Yeah, I think that's the other half of the other half of the mid-year hit. Or no, not the mid-year hit. No, my bad. You're right. It's the other half of the buy-in. Okay. The mid-year. Oh yeah. Did we had the buy-in last year also? Or okay, that's right. Sorry. It's been my daughter's graduating from high school this year. It's been busy. And then we've been saving money up over the last 4 or 5 years talking about the elementary school roof. It's time for that money to be released and fix the roof. So, but we've been saving up, so it's not going to affect the tax rate. And then, what do we got here? And then the last vote. Let's see. Yes, Don.
Is that the total of the new roof?
I don't know. That is the town's share of the new roof. I believe the school district is putting some money into that. But Beth?
Yeah, they did provide some. I don't recall the exact numbers. I want to say it was on the order of $300K from their. I don't know if it was from E&D or from other capital expenditures. But the town or the school did have a contribution. Yeah, I think the total project is either 1.2 or 1.3. So it was pretty substantial, but they had warned us up front that we were going to likely carry the lion's share.
All right, and then we have the cable access fund. Let's see. There's a revenue account for that coming over from Charter. And then, let's see. Revolving accounts is just authorizing the revolving accounts. I think, as an example, planning board needs to collect fees. And then one of the things they do with that money is they put ads in the paper about requests for zoning issues going on. And so rather than limit them, we say when you take money in, it goes into this revolving account and you can use that to immediately spend it rather than, because otherwise, if we gave them, say, $1,000 budget and they got $2,000 worth of business, they're going to be coming back to us and saying, we need more money because we're busy this year. By doing it in a revolving account, it's that way the money comes in, it goes right out, it doesn't touch the budget, and if it's a slow year, we're not over allocating money to an expense account. And if it's a busy year, we're not looking to find more money to cover it. It's just some things lend themselves to this, is what I'll say. And then we've got two citizens petitions that we're tracking. The Jeff, by policy, the advisory committee doesn't recommend on citizens, right? Yep. But there are
As individuals, we will say something at town meeting if we need to.
yeah. The members of the advisory committee can and will speak at town meeting, but the committee as a whole will not take a position on the citizens petitions. And since we're talking about them, I'll just say one is to use free cash for a longevity bonus for town employees. And the other one is for a bylaw change to mandate longevity bonuses, which would have to be funded out of the operating budget and raise and appropriate on an ongoing basis. The question is that came I believe at last year's town meeting there was a longevity bonus for that year. I believe that was discussed at last year's town meeting. There was not a warrant article for the bylaw change last year. That is something that is I don't recall seeing before.
Right, and just to be clear, so if we do speak as individuals, what we will do is come off the days and go down around and, Mr. Moderator, as whatever our name is, and that way, each person has their own individual opinion. I don't think we could probably agree consensusly as far as what's right or wrong in some of the citizen petitions, so that's how we do it.
And if people have questions, obviously you can, outside of this, you can reach up to us. I'm just looking at my schedule for next week. There is, yes. I expect advisory will be meeting next Thursday. I will not be there, so someone else will have to answer any questions if you show up at that meeting. It's senior class night, and I'm not missing that. It's like, if we meet early enough and I can do both, I will do both. But if there's a conflict, nope. All right. And then just to something that Beth spoke to and that I just want to reiterate is the operating budget, all the accounts in the operating budget last for the fiscal year. The warrant articles, they are purpose vehicles. The account, each warrant article that we approve gets an account and gets funded from whatever the source is. That account remains until the purpose of the warrant article is completed. So, or all the money spent. Like as an example, we had a couple years ago, we had a warrant article that authorized buying a new fire truck. And once we purchased that fire truck, we were then able to close that account. And I believe the fire truck was paid for with debt. We also we've authorized an account with some money for tree work. That account will remain in place until either we decide we're not doing any more tree work or we spend all the money. And then once all the money's spent, the account gets closed. Of course, with an account like that, we could always put more money into it and keep it going. That's similar to that's what we do with the highway road reconstruction account. That's something Beth said we put money in every year, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And there are other accounts that get put up there. It's a mechanism by which we are not limited to expending the money in the fiscal year. It gives us some flexibility in time where we have the money, and if the need for it happens next fiscal year, the money's there.
Just one other point to clarify that, and that's extremely important now with a lot of the equipment that's being ordered. The lead times are 12, 18, 20 months out, so that instead of having to come each year and reapply or whatever, this is set and then it can just be carried over. We found that more and more, like the fire truck. I think, what was it, 3 or 4 year lead? It was a very long compared to like just going down to the dealership and buying a car. So
yeah, I think the fire truck was in the 12 to 18 month from when they ordered it to when it was delivered. It's like, okay. And I was gonna say, Peter Martell was in and out. And I'm sure he could tell us how long that took. I can get my top hat and cane and start dancing, but I'm out of things to talk to unless you ask me questions. I can see Rudy, he's thinking about daring me on that. He's going, no.
Don't give him the mic.
let me just make a quick comment. I want to thank Tom for stepping up in the absence of a town administrator. You know, he's done a hell of a job, and he's worked on the committee for a number of years. He was the chairman until he ran for select person, and now he's back with us. I had to twist his arm for a year or more. I don't know how long it was. Did I buy you that ice cream at Clam Box, or no? You bought it, I guess. But anyway,
You owe me.
yeah, I'm sure. We have another 10 articles, warrant articles, as our advisory committee to go discuss, and a couple of reserve fund requests and transfer requests. So if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to put our meeting back into the kitchen and try to finish up. And, you know, feel free to discuss this with us. Hopefully, once Tom scrubs it, get it to Steve, we'll put it up on the website. And again, thanks to Steve for and Beth for actually reaching out. I didn't even know there was a communications committee until last fall, and I got this email from Beth saying I'd like to make a presentation how we can work together, and this is the result of it. So it's very much appreciated. And again, this has been a pet project of mine since I joined the committee, was to try to get a budget presentation so people could ask questions in a more informal setting rather than the moderator where you're like have 1 or 2 minutes and then that's it, and there's a lot of confusion. So hopefully we'll continue to get more people coming in each year as the way we present it you know, gets expanded through social media. So thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you, everyone, very much. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you at town meeting.